Coming to you live from the offices of Chapter 1 Films in Charlotte, North Carolina, this is the 4D Podcast with your hosts, Nathanael Levinson, Greg Prinz, and Liam Maxwell. A new dimension in entertainment. This is the 4D Podcast.
Where's Liam to say we're back? You know, I'm really missing that.
He's
guy
right there.
right now.
Oh, hi, guys. We're back. It's good. It feels good to be back live again. I'm sorry I tripped over all the cables. It was definitely my fault. I was playing with the volleyball in the studio, and I know I'm not supposed to, but I'm just so obsessed with volleyball. I hit it, knocked something over, hit the router, and blew everything up. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize.
I really hope that's how he sounds.
Not at all. Well, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what he sounds like.
He sounds more like an idiot than that, actually.
Whoops, I broke the router again.
Oh, my gosh.
We love you, Liam.
Yep.
Well, whether Liam's here to say it or not, we're back after a...
We're live, baby.
Would you call it a 4-week absence?
I would
because
call
we
it a
weren't
month.
able to go live for our last show?
A 2-show absence. 1.5.
We
Because one just got scrapped because the internet exploded, and one, everything was working, but we couldn't get it to go stream live on YouTube.
Yes, we
So we did
uploaded
record a
afterwards.
show, and we just uploaded it later. So I would call it 1.5 misses.
So we're back to being live, is
Oh,
what I
baby.
should say. We're in the
do it
studio.
live.
We'll do it
Thing sucks.
So Nathaniel, introduce our guest for us today, my
Yes,
man. We got
yes.
somebody here with us, and it's
Yes.
not Liam Maxwell's
It is
face.
not
Somebody
Liam
else.
Maxwell's face.
Discount
We have someone
Liam
else.
here.
Discount Liam. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
This is one of my good childhood friends, Stephen Rue. We grew up together in the great city of Charlotte.
Wow.
He has a twin brother, Kevin, and one of our closest bonds was the fact that I alone, among every human being on Earth, could tell them apart when they looked identical.
Are we sure that this isn't Kevin?
They don't look as identical as they used to. It's a little
I
easier
carry
to
a
tell.
little bit more down in the midsection.
I would
you
say
know.
your faces look more
Right.
different now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, they were 100% identical. You could not tell them
100%.
apart. And somehow, I don't know, I couldn't tell you how I told them apart, but I could tell them apart. I honestly couldn't tell you how.
Maybe it was the long hours playing Halo and getting your butt kicked and
Yeah, great memory. That was my first time ever playing Halo.
yeah.
Kevin, Steven, and our friend Mason all hopped in a warthog and drove around killing me. That was a great first experience for me.
It's like, is this how the game works?
I was like, yeah, this is really fun, guys. I don't even know how
this
to
is
move.
awesome.
This was my first FPS ever. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And
Yeah.
you guys are just mowing me down over and over again. I'm like,
We thought it
really
was
fun.
hilarious.
I'm sure, yeah.
You
You guys were laughing. I was like, yeah, great
is
fun.
that everybody's first experience with a first-person shooter? Is just
I mean,
you dying?
usually, yes,
Like,
but
is
usually,
there ever a healthy way to get into those
I was going to say,
games?
usually it's just, oh, I'm bad at the game and people are killing me. Not, oh, the three other people in a free-for-all have decided to team up against the one person who has no idea what they're doing.
Right.
Seems a little more cruel.
You see, I had a friend growing up. His name was Carp, like the fish, and he was always so bold.
Has he
and-
evolved into a Gyarados
and-
yet? It's been forever.
He
I literally have a Magikarp Band-Aid on my head just so we know.
he was the friend who didn't know how to play any of the games, but insisted that it would be him versus everybody because he was so confident and would just get a night. So he's kind of like the inverse you. Like he would play those games and be like, "This is awesome."
I will say there was one time where I got my petty revenge. We were playing Star Fox 64 split screen.
Yes, oh man.
And,
Let's go.
And
man.
everyone decided
Good
to,
game.
of course, pick an R-Wing, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to be a Landmaster. They're like, no, that's a stupid decision. That's a tank. That's terrible. And I destroyed everyone.
You did.
Dude,
I
you
just
gotta go
dominated.
Landmaster.
And I was like,
And that shouldn't have happened.
No, it shouldn't have.
That tank was just a target. I mean, it was slow. You should not have done well with that. And somehow he must have eaten
because
his
what would
Wheaties
happen
that
is
day.
you guys would be dogfighting, and I would just
Right.
like wait my turn and just boom, bing, snipe you guys out of the sky.
Did you guys
One of my
ever
glorious
do
video game
good
victories.
enough in Star Fox, the single player version, to
To get the
unlock
Super Andross?
where you could just
No.
be a single person running around with a gun in
Listen,
multiplayer?
This is one of the banes of my existence. I literally have lost sleep most of my life thinking about this because and I'm not even joking here. Like
quite-
this is
it's quite a life.
at the ripe old age of 35, I still think about the fact that I can't beat Sector Z. All the other planets seem doable, but Sector Z, they want you to kill 300 enemies in like and
there's like
a minute.
301.
Yeah, and they come at a rate that doesn't actually add up to the amount that you could kill. So yes, I think about this literally every day.
Is that what you have to do to unlock the using the humans in the split screen mode?
You have
Humans.
humans.
Well, whatever. You the fox
Furries.
Yeah.
It's literally no humans actually.
No, it's this thing. Yeah, you have to get a medal on every level, and that means you have to meet the kill count or whatever special task is, and they're insanely hard. You know.
Well, it's funny because some of them are very doable.
Yeah.
Well, some of you
And
get
some
right
of them
away.
are just absolutely crazy.
Right. And as a kid, it always bothered me because that meant you had to go the bad route where you beat fake Andros, and it was always so dissatisfying.
And then he's like over the credits, he's like slapping his bum, like you get me. He doesn't even have an ass; he's just a head.
Yeah.
And he still somehow did that.
He's just a head. It pisses you off every time. Yep.
And then there was the one like member of Star Wolf's team that was like
Okay,
that was
so
like his nephew
still
or
to this-
something.
still to
He's
this
like,
day-
Uncle Andros.
Uncle Andros. Still to this day, I will occasionally say, "I can't let you do that, Star Fox."
Dude, how like I feel like that whole dialogue
it's
was
so
burned into my head.
so
I can
good.
recite it at any point in my life, and I probably haven't played the game in 15 years. And it's like, can't let you do that, Star Fox. Andros has ordered us to take you down. Peppy, long time no see. Andros's enemy is my enemy. Let's take care of these guys first.
I like how his nephew is just like a normal monkey, but he's like this massive, giant, disembodied magic android. Like, what is the I know, granted, there were 2 Super Nintendo games, so I'm missing some lore.
Yeah.
But like, what the hell was Andros?
I don't
It's
think
just
that
like
you're
an
going
acid
to
trip.
find like Andros's like long lost lover and how he became an. Well, I guess he wouldn't have had to have.
Well, it's also like
it's a nephew,
it gives
right?
You like it gives you like little story beats on during the missions, but the story beats are like everyone knows what's going on, but they don't tell you. So they're like, oh, Andros has a new bioweapon. He does the giant clam. Like, what? How is this threatening the rest of the galaxy? Like, it's just a big clam.
This is affecting a local part of the ocean. Where,
I suppose it didn't seem like it was doing anything nefarious, but they're like, we got to stop him from being there. With
He's shooting pearls at us. What
like,
are we gonna do? Get rich off of it? Like
it's,
even like the members of Star Fox's squad are like, this is the enemy's new bioweapon. Like, why the hell would he choose a clam?
it's way too accurate. You spent way too many hours on this.
I'm telling you, it's all of the dialogue from that game is so ingrained in my
that
brain
is
that I
wonderful.
can just like the random cat that shows up. It's cat. Where'd you go? Like the cat, like randomly.
here, Fox.
Falco knows him. Like comes out of nowhere. And
I just
starts shooting
remember.
down
I
enemies.
just remember the having so much trouble with the Independence Day level.
Yeah.
And failing, and it
Bill.
just nukes the city.
Yep.
I'm like, well, crap. I just let everybody die.
Bill lost all his soldiers because he couldn't take care of it. You know?
Dude, Bill, he's the real MVP.
He's one of the
is
real
the
ones.
real.
He's one of the real ones.
You know what gave me anxiety was the end credits when that ship is coming over the horizon. I just wanted it to happen faster. It was really hard for a 10-year-old me to be like, come on.
N64. Peak
Oh,
graphics.
I love
Peak
it.
graphics.
Fox, that's one of ours. Little Bill.
Good old Bill. The other level that gave me anxiety was the train when you had to shoot down
Oh
all
my
those
gosh.
towers.
Dude,
yeah,
that one
every
was
time.
awesome.
Yeah.
I love that because it was one of the first times in a game that I felt like I discovered like the opposite way that you could beat it by like flipping all the switches and having it turn
Yes.
into the
Right,
building.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. You can shoot these switches and it does something. Like before, you could just look everything up online. Like you just kind of figured it out. And I didn't have friends that told me this either. So I thought that I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, I figured it out. Everybody I talked to, I'm like, you guys won't believe this. In that one level, you shoot all the flippy things, and then he drives into the building, and they're like, yeah, we know. And I'm like, it was the first one of those for me. I loved that level so much.
Man,
so cool.
those were the days. So Nathaniel knows this. We first got our N64 when it just came out, and we were playing Mario 64. And my dad, he always kind of had a thing about video games. He was the it's gonna rot your brain.
I mean, he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, he wasn't necessarily wrong, but we all had a profile. Me, my brother, my mom, and my dad. And we all were racing to get the 150 stars and beat Bowser, which still gives me anxiety to this day because my dad got the 150 stars, but he never saved Peach.
Actually, it was 120.
Yeah. There you go. So.
Not good enough.
Hey, I found 30 extras, so I don't know what y'all were doing.
What?
But-
Son, we are already 100% of the game. What, you got all 150? You only need 120 for 100%.
Extra credit.
Sitting there with 149 stars for 6 months, like,
But my dad we would go to our profiles, and we were only allowed to play a certain amount of time each day. And every day we'd wake up and we'd see that my dad was 10 stars ahead of us after being 20 behind. And this was just when the internet had come out, and we found out that he was up till like 4 a.m. My dad, who was, criticizing us for playing video games, and he's looking up on the internet, how do you get beat TikTok clock on?
thanks, Game Facts. It was he went to Ask Jeeves and was like,
Yes.
TikTok clock.
Dialing 311.
Yeah, so I'm stuck on this video game. It's Mario.
Is there a way to beat Rainbow Road without doing it? Yeah, that was my dad. So
Buy a Game Informer to get all the behind the scenes. You guys remember Game Informer magazine?
Oh, yeah.
You guys ever get that?
yeah,
I got that once a month from GameStop because
Yep.
to be you get the free GameStop membership.
Yep.
And they send you
Yeah.
it, and it was like, oh, now I can beat Pokemon Snap. I have a Game Informer.
Yeah.
Now I realize if you
Man,
throw
gosh,
up,
remember when you had to go buy the walkthrough?
oh my gosh,
And
yes.
it'd be like a novel
Yep.
and just all pictures.
It was all like the technical specs of the game, and then finally you get to the one part that you're
like-
looking for on page like 37.
Yeah.
it's like I only care about one cave after Mewtwo. Like, how do I get through it? There's so many doors.
And those old systems too, you always had to buy the Rumble pack or the
Yeah.
expansion pack,
Yeah,
or
and just afforded way too many extra packs.
way too many extra bits. You could hook the Game Boys up to some of them. It was. No, that was the thing we fought over a lot.
unfettered.
Yeah,
It was awesome.
it was a
Pretty great,
different
it's pretty
time.
great. Now it's all one thing.
It is.
I
Yeah.
did just recently jailbreak because I upgraded my Switch because I was having battery trouble with the other
Oh
one.
yeah. Yep.
And it was the original model, so I jailbroke it, and so
Oh,
now I can
nice.
play GameCube games on
man.
on my Switch. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's.
So like
I need to be
booting up
doing
Sonic
that too.
Adventure 2 Battle and like running around at the speed of sound. So good.
Mario Sunshine on the Cube. I probably played that no less than 15 times through. It was. I don't know that game. I like the beach and I like Mario. So there you go.
Resident Evil 4.
Yep.
I played. That was the first M-rated game I ever bought.
Oh man,
And
yeah.
man, I played that so much. What a great game. But anyways, we're here to talk about movies.
Yeah, contrary to what you guys may think listening to the show, we're not talking about video games today. We are talking about a movie. So,
And so there
Nathaniel, what
so
movie are we talking about
We're
today?
talking about Hacksaw Ridge. But before we get into that, I just want to say I have some history watching movie with the Ruse.
knew this was
there are
coming up.
3 movies distinctly that I remember watching with them for the first time. So one is McHale's Navy,
Yes.
which
Such a great
I need
movie.
to go back and rewatch because I remember enjoying it quite a bit.
You know, we need to have
It's
yeah,
El
a movie
Presidente.
night. Yeah.
It's El Presidente.
El Presidente.
Cool Runnings.
Yep. One of the greatest
Classic.
movies of
Cool
all time.
Runnings.
Yep.
And then Tuskegee Airmen. And I'm pretty sure I've told this story before, but I was absolutely traumatized the night we watched Tuskegee Airmen. I don't know if you guys remembered, but I
How
don't know if
old
you
were
remembered.
we?
We were like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I was crying, like
Yeah.
weeping, openly weeping at the end of that movie.
Our sub
And
10-year-old
I'm
self
pretty sure
thought this was a good
and
idea.
I'm pretty sure at the end of the movie, I was mad at you guys. I was like, "Why would you make me watch something so sad?" And you guys were like, "But it was a good movie." I'm like, "Yes, but it was so sad.
good story.
It was a good story." But like, yeah, but everyone
dies.
dies. Everyone dies. But so I don't know if I've ever said this to you guys, but I'm pretty sure I've said it on the podcast several times. But because it was a traumatic experience for me.
Yeah.
When you first told me what movie we were watching, what I heard was Tusky, the Airman. And so my little 8-year-old brain is saying,
I remember this.
my little 8-year-old brain is saying, okay, Tusky the Airman. What could that be about? It must be about a walrus that flies a plane. Like an animated movie about I had convinced myself this was an animated movie about a walrus that flies like a
That
fun
sounds
little
amazing.
Yeah, and I was like,
probably
okay.
not a bad premise
Yeah,
for
I
a
was like,
movie,
okay,
though.
Tusky the Airman.
Like
I mean,
he's
it's
turning
like-
the plane with his teeth, you know?
It's like Porco Rosso, right?
Yeah, right,
So,
right.
Tusky the Airman. And then we watch it, and I'm just like, this isn't a fun animated movie about a walrus. And I'm just weeping.
Wait, what is this? What is Tuskegee?
So Tuskegee Airmen is about a I can't remember any of the numbers. Like it was a
the
troop,
88th Air Force.
The 88th Air Force. It was an all-black regiment.
Yeah.
And they flew in World War II escorting bombers.
Right.
And as the war went on, more and more of them got picked off until there was only one guy left.
Yeah.
And so, like, at the end of the movie, there's only one guy left of all the people. Like, they go through training together. One of them dies in training. But they go through training together, and they're really good at escorting bombers. Like, they don't lose a single bomber.
Yeah.
But slowly they're losing guys until there's one guy left. And then he's supposed to escort a bomber, and they say, well, we're going to put the 87th or one of the other ones on it. And the bomber crew says, no, we want him because they've never lost. Even though it's just the one guy, we want the 88th because they've never lost a bomber.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. There's
true story.
A newer adaptation called Red Tails, which is also a phenomenal movie. But the Tuskegee Airmen, thinking about watching it as 8-year-olds, the final scene is the last pilot going down singing the fight song of the Tuskegee Airmen, and
absolutely traumatizing.
It's traumatizing. It is. I mean, it's way different than a walrus flying a plane. You know,
it is one of those war movies where everybody dies, and it's really, really sad. And it happens slowly, and it was a well-made movie. Like, it was a good movie.
Yeah.
But it was. I wouldn't say it wasn't appropriate, but I wasn't prepared. My 8-year-old self was not prepared to handle that level of emotion.
I feel like most are there war movies that aren't really sad and really like heavy? Do they exist? Isn't
McHale's Navy?
Is it,
That's not really a war movie.
It's not a war movie.
Not a military movie, like an actual war, not
like an actual military movie. Yeah, I mean, war is not a fun thing
I was gonna say,
for anyone
war is
involved.
kind of inherently traumatic,
Right.
and which brings us to the movie we watched this week, which is
Hacksaw
Ridge.
And I gotta say, we'll introduce it here, but this came up in my mind when I said, "Hey, let's do Hacksaw Ridge." Well, I'll let you, like I said, introduce this. But out of all the movies, and I watch, Nathaniel knows this. I watch a lot of movies. I love sitting down and watching a good movie, sports movies, animated movies. I watch the dredges of Netflix.
We've watched some dredges.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
so
we've been there,
out
my
of
friend.
all this, we chose Hacksaw Ridge, which is just reminiscent of Tuskegee.
Yeah, maybe this one had a happier ending than the last one.
did,
Shockingly, this movie about a bunch of people dying horribly and getting mangled in war had a happier ending than Tuskegee Airmen.
This is great. So I'll let you take us away with it.
Yeah, so
Give us just like a brief overview, Nathaniel.
So Hacksaw Ridge takes place towards the end of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2/3 of the movie is actually not.
it's not a war movie at all.
It's not a war movie at all. So it focuses
like a time
on
capsule.
A kid named
Desmond Doss.
Desmond Doss.
Yep.
Who's the son of a corporal who fought in World War I and lost his regiment. Like his boys died. So the movie opens with him, the dad, who is Agent Smith. What's his actual name?
Hugo Weaving.
Hugo
Hugo
Weaving.
Weaving, yes.
Hugo Weaving, like
Master
at,
Anderson.
like at the he's drunk at the cemetery.
It's pretty dark. It's a pretty dark opening.
Like mourning over his
Yeah.
lost comrades who he lost in World War One. And then it cuts to Dawson Doss, who he's fighting with his brother and almost kills him.
Yeah.
And it starts to develop. They grow up, and his family is Seventh-day Adventist, so he adopts a policy of nonviolence.
Right.
But World War II is coming around. His brother enlists and goes off, and he says, "I need to enlist too, but I can't hold a gun. So I'm going to
Won't
enlist."
even touch it.
Yeah, won't even touch a gun. So he's like, "I'm going to enlist, but I'm not going to kill anyone. I'm going to be a medic." So he ends up like making friends and eventually dating and falling in love with this nurse, and so he starts learning about medicine and things like that. And so he ends up going to he goes to training camp, boot camp, and his commander, the drill sergeant and the commander are trying to get him kicked out.
Right.
Because their concern is that someone who's not going to fire a gun is going to be unsafe for his team members.
Right. He's going to disobey orders.
So they are just being absolutely cruel to him, trying to get him to either drop out, and they try to get him a psych eval to get him to be kicked out because he's insane, but they can't do that. They court-martial him because they order him to pick up a gun, and he won't do it. So they court-martial him, make him miss his wedding.
Yeah, great stuff.
Yeah. But eventually, his dad ends up talking to either a commander or a general or someone high up in the army who, like the day of the court-martial,
gives a letter to the judge saying he's a conscientious objector. He is allowed by the Constitution to not have to carry a gun. Right. And so they drop the charges. So he ends up going out into the field. And their whole goal is to get up and take this place called Hacksaw Ridge. So it's like, giant cliff, and they want to hold the ground above the cliff. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the movie, from that point on, like once they deploy, the rest of the movie is they go up onto the ridge and they're fighting, and then they end up having to retreat. And Desmond stays up there trying to rescue people and like lowering them down the cliff. That's like the whole rest of the movie.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack. It's one of my favorite stories. It's kind of one of these don't judge a book by its cover stories on steroids, let's say. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, like you said, the first 2/3 of it are not really about war. It's about how he grew up, his growing up in a house of faith with a very messed up father who fought in the Great War. He's the only one who survived. Like we said, it's got a lot of darker themes in the beginning that he has to overcome a lot of hardship, which is also kind of what develops Desmond's character. And it's a really cool thing to see as it unfolds. Yeah.
And you think that the reason he doesn't kill is because when he almost killed his brother.
Right.
But it turns out later that the real reason that he refuses to hold a gun is because his dad weighed in on him when he's much older. Mm-hmm. His dad gets very drunk and is like drunkenly waving a gun around, threatening his mom. Right. And so he takes the gun from him and Desmond takes the gun from his dad and points it at him and is like about to shoot and kill his dad. And so after that incident, he swears he'll never touch a gun again.
Right. In the scene where he's describing this backstory, he says he murdered his dad in his heart that day, and that just changed his whole mindset on everything, which is just so interesting to see. I watch that movie a lot, and I think about how good he is to the people around him throughout the time. He's very well practiced at dealing with tough situations. Almost kills his brother, thinks about murdering his dad, and yet he's resilient enough to hold to his beliefs. And what's just amazing is he defied the entire army. Yeah. It was, I'm going to go in here. I'm not going to do this in a toxic way. He just says, hey, I want to help, but I don't want to shoot a gun, which is very interesting, so.
And some of the most powerful parts of the movie are when he gets a chance to explain why he thinks because the main opposition he's facing in the movie are people saying, hey, that's cool that you believe that, but clearly you have to understand, like, the army's not a place for you then. Like, that's the part where you're getting wrong. And the most powerful parts of the movie are when he gets a chance to explain, no, you don't get it. Like, I have to do this. Like, I'm just as mad as all of you guys. You guys don't understand that part. But my goal here is going to be to help people, while you guys are fighting. I want to be there helping people. I want to be there just like everybody else. And so he does this obviously in a really eloquent, beautiful way. He gives a couple
as eloquent as a Southern accent can be.
He has a couple chances, I think, to give speeches throughout the movie, but super powerful moments, and then you get to obviously see it unfold. But my experience with this movie was the first time I watched it, and maybe even more the second time I watched it, and then even more the more I dug into what the true story was, that the movie itself was like, I found it corny the first time I watched it until you get to the end and you realize that most all the details are very, very true. Like, very true.
So at the very, very end of the movie, like after it's wrapped and it starts to roll credits,
which is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, it plays interviews from the actual people, and it's interviews where they're talking about the stuff that they showed in the film. Yeah, and there's this one really powerful moment where he's helping a guy. And the guy's like, I can't see. And so he pulls out his canteen and washes the blood and gunk off of his eyes. And so the guy opens his eyes and looks at Desmond and says, I thought I was blind. Mm. And it seems like a little cheesy, but it's like a heartfelt moment. You can see how if you were like being cynical, you're like, well, that's really cheesy. But that's something that actually happened. Like in the interview, he talks about that. And the real Desmond is like, that smile that he gave me when he realized he wasn't blind was the best, was reward enough for everything I did.
Yeah, I love it. And that in itself, that's something that is, it's one of my pet peeves about Hollywood, when they take a really good story and they, every story is going to have some kind of narrative that they write, maybe some embellishment to drive the arc of a movie. But there's been a lot of movies that I watched that just you take it as truth. This is what actually happened, and then they ended up kind of being ruined by that. Captain Phillips, Hidden Figures, those are all really good movies, but when you dig into the truth of what actually happened, it's a little different, you know. Whereas movies like this, I love it when they show. Band of Brothers did a really good job of this, obviously the TV series, where they actually have the people interviewed and they're saying, like you said, exactly what happened in the movie. Because I'll admit too, I thought the same thing. Not only did I find some of it corny in a way, but also in the first 2/3 when they're going through the love story and all of these things, I'm thinking, man, I'm trying to stay with this. You know, I'm like, well, where's the story going, right? I'd also like to mention the corniest love story.
It's definitely
It was pretty sappy.
I was sitting there and I was like, dang, Nathaniel, this is how easy it is.
Greg's sitting there like,
Yeah,
why am I
I've been
still
doing-
single? It's just it's this easy.
I've been doing
Like,
it wrong.
This is
what
literally
am I doing? What
on
all
my
I need to do
notes.
is be Spider-Man.
He's like, I met a girl today. He's like, I'm gonna marry her. He's like, oh, have you told her that? He's like, not yet, but we'll figure that out. And I'm like, oh, jeez.
It's literally one of the top highlighted points on my notes. It's exactly that. It's, hey, I'm gonna go marry a girl. Does she know you're gonna marry her? Nope. It's
Not yet.
that easy, right? And I've talked to, when my grandparents were still alive, I talked to them and I was like, was it that easy then? And he's like, yeah. So my friend said, hey, I know this really pretty blonde. Do you want to meet her? Yep. And now they're married. And it was just like,
I mean,
Modern society is ass, man.
It is. Now you got to go through 10 different layers of dating advice. So.
it's definitely like, I look at that and I'm just like,
Yeah.
A little jelly.
A little bit.
Dating's so much more complicated.
I mean, I will say though, like just get back to like the story of it. Like the acting in this movie is pretty excellent. I mean,
solid.
I think
it's great.
I haven't really seen anything Garfield has been in that I think he's done a bad job.
He's
at.
an
I think he
excellent
might be
actor.
one of the more underrated actors because
You took the words out of my mouth.
he's not a British. I mean, he's a British guy, and he's playing a Southern.
He's good at
derpy
he's
Southern
good with his
kid.
voices. He's good with his voices.
And he did an
is.
amazing job. He thoroughly convinced me that I mean, just his mannerisms, his
Mm-hmm.
accent. And he obviously gets really good support with Hugo Weaving.
of
He gets
course.
awesome support from some of the other soldiers. I will say
Vince
one of the more out of place ones. Yeah, is Vince Vaughn. Like he just he just
I kept
played in too
expecting
many
him to say,
funny
"You can dodge a
things.
wrench, you can dodge a ball."
You can dodge a bullet, you can dodge a ball.
I just expected him to start just throwing sarcasm at people and just like, because I'm like, it's Vince Vaughn. Like he's gonna break out
Welcome
laughing.
to Average Joe's Boot Camp.
Yeah, it was especially weird because he's saying the stuff that could easily be turned into comedy.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "You look Indian. I'm gonna call you Chief." Like that could definitely have been like a comedy bit.
Yeah, it could
It was
have been.
weird. It was weird. He's okay. It may have been how they framed it,
Yeah.
but Vince Vaughn is gigantic.
He is.
He's a tall
big
guy in
man,
real life, yeah.
Yeah.
He's just like in
His stature
Dodgeball, he
fits the
doesn't
part.
look that big.
Right.
In this movie, he's like towering over the recruits.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I was going to ask you guys about that because it was so funny to see Vince Vaughn in a newer movie. Obviously, this is
And in a
2016.
serious role.
Yeah, exactly. In a serious role. And yeah, the 1940s insults were just, phenomenal. You got Chief, Private Cornstalk, Private Ghoul, Private Idiot.
The one guy that's just naked, there.
Yep, just
like
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
He's naked. Yep. No, that's so great. Now, what's really actually cool about thinking about all the people that he went through boot camp with. We mentioned Hollywood. I love the fact. I don't love the fact that he was naked, but I love the fact that it's this derpy looking dude. He's not even wearing his clothes. He has to do base camp naked now because he's being punished for it. And yet he's portrayed as kind of the most confident out of them all. And yet when you see him in the war, he's laying down, he's crying, he's saying, "I'm wounded." And that just speaks to the fact, and this is something I think Hollywood does a good job of, is really portraying the fact that these soldiers aren't just G.I. Joe, I'm just going to go in there. Yeah, exactly right. They're actually human, which I'm a civilian. I never went into military, law enforcement, anything like that. I often think about, I'm lift weights, I have shotguns, I do all these things. But if I got into a war, I'd probably be that guy. I'd be hiding under a turtle shell somewhere, and it's
and
amazing.
I think it did a great job of portraying like, hey, the people who have never been in a conflict, they're freaking out.
Yeah.
Like freaking out.
Absolutely.
And that's what you would expect. And then, Vince Vaughn's character, whose name I cannot remember. He's like getting wounded, but he's keeping a cool head because he's experienced.
Right.
He knows what's going on. He knows like, I'm probably gonna die, but he's very level headed in the middle of the battle, and he ends up staying up at the top of the ridge, and he keeps covering fire and tries to get everyone else out of there. So I thought they portrayed that really well.
And I think it's all, at least from like the story standpoint, from what the movie's trying to do, it's just trying to show you that here is an accurate depiction of a bunch of guys in boot camp. They think they're all tough. They get all the training. They get to this area that is hectic and wild, and the actual reports of this place are insane. They said sometimes that the machine gun fire was so thick it would just cut people in half. Like it was just the wildest place. And they get there and they're all they're turning into mush. Like they're horrified, and we can all relate to this, right? And they do. And Mel does a great job.
I can relate to having a grenade blow my legs off.
No, we can relate to being terrified at the thought of that. Is what I mean. And Mel obviously does a great job at showing the gruesomeness. I mean, there's some really really cool fire stunts. There's some really intense.
Yeah, it's really interesting too. We were talking about this after the movie. The fire stunts are incredible.
Yeah.
Really good, and most of the gore effects look pretty realistic.
Yeah, they
everything
do.
looks really realistic.
Right.
And then it cuts to the boats, and who put these paper mache boats on the lake? They look terrible.
The artillery firing looks like
I didn't even catch that.
It looks like a 1995 screensaver.
Yeah, it's pretty. It looks like a PS1
Windows
graphic.
XP. Yeah.
It's like the maze running background that used to be in Windows.
It's Call of Duty for PlayStation.
Oh, that's
destroyers
hilarious.
firing. It's bad.
You could clearly tell that they were like, "Hey, here's this we're gonna put a ton of effort into the costumes, the makeup, all this stuff," and then it cuts to
they're like, can we
Monty Python budget?
Yeah, they're like, it cuts to a Pong screen. It's like, and it cuts back. It cuts back, and there's just these bombs blowing up, and I'm like, wait, hold on a minute, that guy didn't do his job. It's like you just fast forward to that day, and there was some dude just like, hey, I wasn't even close to being done. They just sent it out there. They just started.
I'm guessing Mel was like, can we get an actual destroyer to fire its cannons? And they're like, no. All right, well, quick. Tony, plug in your PlayStation and boot it up. It was bad.
Get Battlefield original,
original Battle. Yeah, it was bad. And one of the reasons it looks so out of place is because it didn't gel with any of the other visuals, which looked very real.
Well, and I was going to say the visuals in this movie were very real.
Yeah,
I mean, like you said, the gore, even for that matter, the costuming and the look and feel that they had of growing up in Virginia, in 1940, 1930, right? So it was a very well put together movie. I did not catch the boats. That is absolutely hilarious.
Well, it was just so jarring. We were just like, who left their Lego set on the set?
Oh, that's funny. One of the things I also appreciated about the movie was I appreciate good storytelling. I mean, that's kind of the crux of making a movie.
What you want from a movie.
Exactly right. And when directors or writers use foreshadowing, everything's like the little details, like the bowline knot. He's picking on Desmond. Vince Vaughn is for tying this knot incorrectly.
Knot,
one for each tit. What ends up happening is that's the very knot that ends up saving 60 people off the hacksaw. And I love that. It's just great storytelling.
I will say, I for sure thought that the Bible that she gave him right at the beginning was going to stop a bullet.
I thought that too.
I was
to
absolutely convinced that was going to happen. I was like, this is Chekhov's Bible right here.
That part was true, that he lost his Bible, and then guys went back and picked it up.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
And that's what's so cool about it is like all the craziest parts are the true parts. I really bet the stuff they fudged on a little bit to make the narrative flow better was like the boring stuff that you didn't notice.
Right.
It was like he actually missed his brother's deployment, not his wedding.
Maybe something like that.
You could definitely tell that that beginning is manufactured because the story itself is. It just takes place on Hacksaw Ridge. It's the fact that he could save all these people while being a pacifist.
Yeah.
And so him going through boot camp and then getting onto Hacksaw Ridge is really the only part of the story that kind of matters. The beginning part, although it's done really well, it doesn't even show him going back to her at the end of the movie. I mean, like, she disappears.
That's a pet peeve of mine.
She disappears in the first act of the movie, and then kind of flashes back a little bit, when he's like in being court-martialed or whatever.
Right.
But as soon as he's deployed, that's it. You never get a scene where he comes back home or anything like that. Like the movie ends, he's still at Hacksaw. So
which they were married for like 40 years after that. Before
Right.
she passed in like 91, I think they said.
Yeah.
So they were married for,
a long
45
time,
more
yeah.
years.
But you could tell, like, he couldn't just start and end the movie just with that. Like, he needed to add
right.
some kind of character there. Like, he needed to develop some kind of relationship, which it's true. He had a wife, so like let's include that a little bit. You know, they probably made it a little more exciting than maybe it was in real life.
Maybe, but who knows?
But
it's possible that was like true to form.
Maybe he asked for his blood back. Who knows?
Well, she wasn't a nurse until after they got married.
Well, there you go. Maybe,
she had to become a nurse because he was disabled after.
Oh,
after,
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, because they couldn't even include all the things he did because Mel Gibson was like, it would be way too corny if we included all this because nobody would believe it.
Wow.
So,
Kidding.
so the part where he like kicks the grenade.
Yeah.
The real part is he throws his leg on it.
Are you
to cover it, and it almost blows his leg off. It puts like 17
Wow.
pieces of shrapnel in it, and so they put him on a gurney, whatever, and they're walking him out. He sees somebody wounded, and so he rolls himself off the gurney and patches the guy up, and then he's like, "Here, he's like, put him on the gurney and take him off." And so he just lays there, and he's waiting to be rescued, and then he gets hit by a sniper in the arm. It shatters his arm. And then nobody comes back for him, so he has to crawl 300 yards back to the edge of Hacksaw and then makes his way down. That's the actual part. And Mel Gibson was like, "Yeah, we can't do that." That's so insane.
Let's just have him kick a grenade. It's more believable.
And it's wild because then you watch the movie and all you're thinking is like, well, at least for me, again, first time watching, was sitting there like, all right, well, this is like,
and that to me
what
was
are the odds?
Was like
he does this, he does that.
That moment for Vince Vaughn where I was like, okay, he's level headed. He knows what's going on. He's experienced. Was he's with Hollywood and Hollywood's freaking out and a grenade lands at the feet. He's like, oh, hold on, and just tosses it back.
Yep. Get up, son. And sitting duck's a dead duck. Yeah. No, but it's crazy. And what is funny is we can't get away from at least one slow clap moment like we saw in Cool Runnings back in the day. Now there wasn't a slow clap, but there was this POV scene where he's being walked out and everyone's kind of spreading apart. Now I cry every time. I'm not gonna lie. I love that scene, but it's definitely the Hollywood slow clap. Let's move into the sunset type of moment. So. Yeah.
I mean, it's powerful. Like the part where he finally makes it down the ridge, and they've all been seeing all the people he's been saving, and the first person that just touches him, he freaks out. Looks at him like
that got me.
And it's just like you can just tell like how much he's been through, and it's just wild. It's one of those movies that really inspires you to.
It does.
And also the and again the interviews at the end kind of sealed it. Like at the end of the movie I was like, man, that was a good movie. And then the interview started and I was like tearing up.
Yeah.
But everyone thought he was going to immediately die, that he was going to be completely useless, that he was a liability, that he had no business being there. And he changed everybody's mind. I think to me the most powerful scene is when they go back to Hacksaw.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are we waiting for? Well, sir, the men are waiting for
Private Dawes
to pray for them.
Yeah. Who the heck is Private Dawes? Yeah. It's one of the most powerful scenes.
And to me, that's like the greatest witness is he won them over with his actions.
Yeah.
Like he stuck to his guns. Not literally. Not literally.
Yeah, not literally.
But he stuck to his metaphorical guns. But he stood by his convictions, even when it was incredibly bad for him. And the easiest thing to do, and some people might argue the right thing to do was to give that up because and he has this conversation with multiple people in the army where he's like, I'm not going to kill them, and they're all like, it says don't. It doesn't say don't kill. It says don't murder.
Right.
Which is there's a I would stand by Augustine's just war theory.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But to violate your conscience, to force someone to violate their conscience is never a good thing.
Right.
But they're all saying, hey, it's good that you're a moral person, but we are at war, and the consequence of us losing the war. You've admitted that you understand the consequence. That's why you're joining.
Right.
So are you not willing to? It's not even. They're not even like, hey, make an exception for this. They're like, you can do this. Isn't violating your morals.
Right.
And so they're having like reasonable philosophical arguments.
Yeah.
And he says, no, this is what I believe.
He was willing to go to jail so that he didn't even have to touch a gun. It wasn't even, and whatever you, like you said, whatever you prescribe to as far as, beliefs on that level, it's just if a man stands by his convictions, he can do great things, you know. And I love seeing how he defied the army. He redeemed his dad and all of this. You know, there's this great scene in the middle, like you said, when he goes to this brigadier general and he busts through the court martial and hands this letter over and says, "Hey, you know, this is my son. He's allowed to be a conscientious objector." And
like right after that, it's really subtle. His wife is like, he asks his wife, "Where's my dad?" Oh, he left already. Yeah, and he's like, "Okay, tell him I love him."
Yeah. Yeah, big moment. And it's interesting, too, because his dad couldn't even stand to be there for that moment. He just said, nope, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do the right thing. And then I'm going to let my son, you know, move forward from there. There's a lot of deep moments in that's easy to overlook, you know. So
I think one of the more, I mean, it's in that same moment. Well, it's just before that. So he's in jail. And I think it's one of the more powerful lines is when he's talking to his wife.
I love this.
And she's like, okay. I mean, she's obviously she's the wife, so she's reason. She's like, come on, just give this up. And he's like, well, I mean, I can't, obviously. And she's sitting there like, wait, why? And he's like, well, not only would it be, you know, betraying my own convictions, but also like, who would it be for you? Like, who would be the man that you married?
Yeah.
If I am not, like, I wouldn't be the person that you fell in love with.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the man that I wanted to be in your eyes. I love that line.
Yeah. It just, and I mean, I think, and in the
movie,
he
even asks her, like, if I gave this up, you know, would I still be the person that you fell in love with? And she says, no.
Yeah.
You're right. Like, I agree with you.
And I think it's that theme of your convictions being powerful to other people is continued and echoed and ultimately finished with that scene where he prays for them before they go up back on Hacksaw, where it doesn't, you know, it's not like they were all converted and whatever, but they all like the commander sat with him and he's like, they all want a piece of whatever it is you have.
Right.
And they know that it's Saturday, and so they've asked if you could just pray for them.
Yeah.
And so he goes out there and he does, and they wait. They seriously, they're totally cool with waiting. And I just think that's it's a movie you watch and you want to be more. You want to be a man of stronger convictions and
well, and
you want to be the person who says,
yeah.
if I faced that situation, I would stand by my convictions. But the sad fact of the matter is, for most people, when you face with that kind of pressure, most people will cave.
Yeah, and the extent that he stood by his convictions really gets me. The scene when he, excuse me, the scene when he actually saves the Japanese soldier. You know, I mean, he's literally there to save lives. He's not discriminating on who, and that just, it's such a reflection of, you know, who God is and all these wonderful things that he didn't discriminate. He said, I'm here to save. People can think what they're going to think, but that's what I'm here to do. And so he goes as far as, if it's true, you know, if it's not embellished, you know, he went and saved the enemy, you know, which is just so wonderful. You know,
when the two guys in the Jeep say, oh, you know, where these guys come from? Oh, the Dawes is still up on Hacksaw Ridge sending them down.
Yeah.
And there's this little line, and I think I'm overthinking about it. It says he even sent a couple of Japs down.
Yeah. They didn't make it.
Yeah, they didn't make it. I'm like, did they shoot the Japanese?
I think that is
that the implication?
The
the
implication
implication,
is that they, like, even though he's sending him down, they were like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Well,
I'd have to have someone tell me one way or the other, because I'm not sure that's a fair thing to. Well, because you know, and Greg pointed this out when the Japanese guys surrender, and they just pull out a bunch of grenades.
Yeah,
and it's like the second time they pull out the white flag, you're probably just going to shoot them because you're like, no, you're clearly just trying to kill us all.
Right.
I thought that was one of the. I think that it was an important thing to show in that. I think probably to get you in that mindset of being like, oh, here are guys that they're defeated, you know, whatever. It shows some of them committing seppuku, and they come out, you know, they get that white flag, and you're like, okay, this is a time to respect that. And then they pull out grenades, and they kill a bunch of people, like literally thinking you could have been one of those people going to collect these people that are surrendering, and now you're dead. Yeah, and so it's like, well, what do you think when you see the next enemy that's surrendering? Like, what has that act done to you? And so I've never obviously been a fan of the brutal kind of like, oh, well, I hate them enough to where like I'm just going to shoot the people that are surrendering. I'm going to shoot those that are wounded, whatever the case is. But it gives you a kind of a more interesting appreciation for what they must have been going through.
Right.
And I think the movie also does a pretty good job to not I think it could have very easily been a movie about, oh, this was the right call always. This is what we should have done the whole time. Like if this was made 2024, not by Mel Gibson, then maybe
First of all, it would have been an all-female
exactly
compliments.
right. Yep.
And I think it would have been like, hey, this was the way we should have done it. Like all you horrible people fighting. Whereas this movie, I think it stood the ground of saying, no, this is a good battle to fight, and it also was never demeaning to the people that were battling and using weapons. It showed them saving people lots of times, right? Their men are down, a bunch of Japanese come around the corner, Desmond's about to get shot with his platoon, and then a bunch of people mow those guys down. And it's like, okay, well, this is a very clear example of...
And even Desmond acknowledged, I think it's okay...
that we're here. Like, I think it's a good war
I'm not saying that other people are
It's just his
wrong.
convictions.
He's like, I personally can't take a life.
Right. And what was so interesting about that is his level of fearlessness made him the most dangerous person on that battlefield. When you really get right down to it, he was willing to stay up there alone. He was willing to go. You know, I love the oh man, I can't even remember the line now. But he says, well, if they can't see us, we can't, or if we can't see them, they can't see us, right? And he just runs out in the middle of where everyone's like still hiding in the foxholes. So he's. You know, like you said, he's angry, which the film did a good job of showing when he's watching the American soldier get executed, kind of in the lull of the battle. He's angry. He's furious about what's going on, and he's not judging his fellow soldiers. He actually you can see it in his eyes that he's grateful that Vince Vaughn just shot the guy on top of him. You know, but it's this level of I'm there, I'm fighting. He's absolutely fearless, and he's right in the mix of it. He's not hiding behind waiting for the battle to end or anything like that. So yeah, it was really great.
It was a well told, like, on top of the true story being so phenomenal. I think Mel Gibson did a good job to actually tell the story in a way that was like, it could have been done pretty poorly, I think, in a lot of different ways, and it wasn't.
And that indecisiveness too. I love what you were saying. You know, it really depicts on, hey, what is the right what is the right move in these situations, right? It showed a lot of well, you know, Desmond, he's still out there. Should we go up? He shot, he saved these Japanese people. Should we keep them alive? You know, all these things. Like you said, it's implied in that scene, but it really just shows the imperfection of battle. You know,
it's a war, and also the fact that Desmond. It never says no. Desmond is right to not kill people,
right?
And it never says, oh, the army is right to want Desmond to kill people. It's like, no, they both have their convictions and they're sticking by them, and they both have reasonable points, and you got to figure out for yourself where you fall on that scale. And I think there's a way, I think there's a place you can come to where you say, in some way, both of them are right.
Yeah, right.
I would personally lean on just war theory, and I think there's plenty of examples in the Bible of God saying, yeah, you can kill aggressors.
Right.
You're allowed to defend yourself and people around you and your nation.
Just don't have your person's husband murdered, so you can
just don't just don't be so next time we go to war, Joe Biden's not allowed to be staying in the White House at home, or he's going to end up sleeping with Hillary Clinton or something. I don't know. I think that's the lesson here. I think that's the lesson we've all learned.
Well done.
Right as I was drinking water. Great job.
That's the message of Hacksaw Ridge.
That's it right there. No, I'm just going to point out one pet peeve, and this has nothing to do with Hacksaw Ridge. This is just a Hollywood thing. It's the syndrome of not saying bye when you hang up. It's the same thing when at the end you have Sam Worthington. He's confessing to Andrew Garfield, Desmond Dawes, that he misjudged him, which is, by the way, one of the greatest scenes in the movie. He's just explaining all these things. But just a small pet peeve: why doesn't Andrew Garfield respond? I know it doesn't. It always bothers me when somebody says all these wonderful things, and the extrovert that I am, I'd be like, "Oh man, that's a really great thing.
No,
Thanks
you're
for saying
great.
it.
You're great.
You're fine." He just stares at him. It's like, okay, he just asked, "Maybe you'll forgive me someday."
Maybe.
Silence.
Say it, goddammit.
You're gonna forgive me, right? Right, Desmond. You're gonna forgive me? Hello,
please,
Desmond.
please.
Right? No, that was interesting too, because he was like, obviously during boot camp, he's the biggest bully,
Right.
and just absolutely despises him.
Yeah.
And then they get stuck in a foxhole for the night, and they end up having a
Well, that's a different scene.
Yeah,
You were talking about the commander at the end of the movie,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
the
yeah. At the
commander.
end
Sorry,
of the
I was
movie.
thinking about the.
Well, they have
but
very
it's the
similar
same-
lines.
Same,
Yeah.
same kind
they
of
go through
arc.
the same thing where they
Yeah.
say, "I
Yeah,
misjudged you." They both have
yeah,
that
they're both.
speech.
Yeah, they both have that.
You're thinking of when Smitty's in the foxhole
Yeah,
with him,
Smitty.
and that's also probably two of the top scenes of just that realization of, hey, I really misjudged you, like, you know. And what I love about that scene is you do get the full backstory. It's the moment where you have the flashback to, you know, the drunk scene when Desmond's aiming a gun at his own father's head. I mean, I can't even wrap my head around what that would feel like, how just absolutely horrendous that would be of a memory. But it's this moment where I can't remember his name. In the movie he's Smitty, and he's you know, he's relating to Desmond Dawes because he also, you know, he was shipped around in different places. He never really knew his parents. He would be lucky to, you know, have an argument with his dad, essentially, right? But then he's having this realization, oh my gosh, there's a reason why this guy believes this. It's not just him being an asshat. You know, it's not Desmond just being a greater than thou type of attitude. It's, hey, you had a really traumatic experience, not just one, but a whole lifetime worth of it. And this is what led you to hold to your convictions. And yet you're still here, you're still saving lives. And there's just this respect that was gained between the two of them. Great scene. It's a really solid scene of just that unveiling of the judgment coming down, you know. So
he has the moment where he looks over at the picture and he's like, you know, you're batting out of your league there. And then he's like, they've only been enemies at this point. And so Desmond starts to nod, and then he just goes, yeah, I am. Yeah. And they both start laughing, and you're like, oh, finally, there's some kind of bonding here going on.
Yeah.
But I think it did a good job at developing those relationships too.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I don't think other than Smitty, I couldn't identify any of the people that were like, like it would show some guy die, and everybody's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, wait, was he a guy from the camp? I can't remember. Like they all.
It took me about 4 or 5 watches because I've seen the movie about 4 or 5 times now, and you know, Private Ghoul, the guy who's like big,
I remember Ghoul.
looking. Yep. But then you had some of the other ones that are just harder, like Smitty. You forget that he was Private Idiot in the beginning. He's the
Ghoul,
one that-
Idiot, and Hollywood are the only ones that I can visually be like, oh, it's that guy. All the other, like Chief and the other guy, like I don't know, like a bunch of people died. They could have been, because they were like, so and so died right away, and I'm like, was I supposed to know him too? Because I don't remember who that was.
That is true. There was a lot of faces that were introduced quickly. It just makes me think of one of my favorite lines. Have you ever looked a goat in the eyes? No? Good. That'd be unnatural. But it does. It's just that they're very briefly introduced, but you still get that sense that, hey, this is his group of guys that he graduated with and stuff. It's just, you do have those moments of, who? You know?
Yeah. I couldn't tell you who's the guy who gave up the transfusion. Was that one of his boys?
That was
the other doctor.
Yeah, that was
the other doctor. Okay.
Right. And that was a big moment too, because he gave up his plasma, but it's another one of those things where this guy came in the last third of the movie, and that's allowed to happen. You know, characters come in whenever they're introduced, but he does. He comes in very quickly. He says, "I'm the other doctor," and then boom, they're working together. And so
I do love that he's like, first thing you need to know is they aim for medics.
Yeah, get those.
So he
M's
takes
off.
he takes his armband off.
Yeah.
That was a true part. The Japanese really were targeting medics.
were very incredibly brutal in their warfare.
The Pacific War in general, I'm very grateful that I've never had to be part of any war. Let's just put it that way. But you think of that compared to modern war, compared to, the European side. And I don't think there's any good situation in a war. It's not like we're going to Chuck E. Cheese, but imagining what they did in the Pacific. I don't know if you guys have seen other series on that.
And part of it goes back to, Japan has a history of
a long history.
Absolute exceptionalism.
Yes.
And, what they did in China was just monstrous.
Yeah.
But they are, it was the Japanese spirit was victory at all costs.
At all costs.
And I'm willing to give up my life for it.
Right.
And so, the whole thing, like when they surrendered, they weren't actually surrendering.
No. Yeah.
And they were brutal and cunning and vicious and very cunning.
Right. And they were going back to ancient samurai tradition where they're literally taking their own life out of
it's all about
failure and keeping their honor in failure.
Shame, honor.
Yeah, exactly. Shonner.
Yeah, Shonner.
Shonner. Wow.
That sounds like the kid that you don't really want to interact with in class.
I don't want to hang out with Shonner.
Shonner, he came in from...
Sit down, Shonner.
It's like your name should just be Sean. Stop with this.
That's the parents that got a little too creative,
What is this?
Roll call. Shonner? No,
Shonner.
You're just Sean. I'm not saying your name.
Did we just move into an Aaron bit? D-nice.
I'm coaching Wellington swim team, and Joel's coaching with me.
Oh, that's awesome.
He has both an Aaron and a Balake. I was like, look at that.
Wow.
Oh, my gosh. Oh. But yeah, man. So, going back to that, though, there's just the Pacific War in general, like the mud, the Japanese army with their tradition of just absolute warfare. This is not the first time Hollywood's depicted the poisoned water with dead bodies. And it's just imagining being there with the rain, with everything. It's like, yeah, these guys, I have so much respect for them. Every single one of them. They could have gone there to cook and I would have had respect for them. So, yeah, it's a great part of the story that they didn't shy away from in that as well. So,
how does this compare for you guys? I mean, I don't know how much of a war movie you are, Nathaniel, or you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of war movies. Where does this rank amongst war movies? I mean, what is it?
I am struggling to think of another war movie I've watched recently.
Really?
Okay. Let me think of the war movies I've watched. Braveheart, which was also Mel Gibson.
yeah, I was going to say the original.
The Patriot, which is also Mel Gibson.
God, what a
So I'm pretty sure I've
phenomenal
only
movie.
seen military
Such a great
movies
movie.
with Mel Gibson, and of those, this one was good.
Yeah.
But it's all different. It's hard to compare.
We Were
So
Soldiers.
it-
Another
Oh,
Mel
yeah, we were
Gibson.
Mel Gibson. Yep.
There he is.
So if I'm thinking about World War II specifically,
Yeah.
war movies, I am struggling to think of another one that I've sat down and watched. I've never seen Saving Private Ryan.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Really?
I saw Black Hawk
Oh.
Down, but that's more modern
That's a
day.
tough one because it's a little.
That's more like a special op and less of like a.
And they strayed away from the story a
Yeah.
little bit. So, yeah, it's a little tougher on that one. But, yeah.
But I really haven't watched that many World War II war movies. War movies just don't really do it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is pretty high up on my list. I'm like
Yeah.
you. I've watched a lot of war movies, and you could really start getting compartmentalized with this. Modern war versus World War II versus
Sure.
Great War versus colonial.
Civil
And,
War.
yeah, exactly. Civil, like you said, The Patriot, phenomenal movie, right?
That was revolutionary, but yeah.
One of those.
Okay,
one of those.
I'm terrible. Like when you're like, oh, World War II, I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna say something stupid, and it's
Well,
not
here's
gonna
the
be
That
here-
happened with
here-
swords
let me help
against
you.
the
World
Ottoman
War
Empire.
World War One was about Germany, and World War
Yeah.
II was about Germany. So I hope that clears that up.
Yeah, there you go.
perfect. Now I'll say what I was
World
thinking.
War II was Nazis. World War One was just a clusterfluff of all the European
So
nations
out
being
of the
like, I
movies
want to
about
conquer
Germany,
you. Yeah.
no, this is probably top 5 for me. I really enjoyed this movie a lot. So I'm curious to know what you think about this.
No,
Yeah.
I really like it. I find it as a whole movie kind of odd because of how separate the first act and
Very
then,
separate,
and then
very
the
different
middle.
stories.
I guess you could segment it, although the timing, it's like the first act goes by pretty quickly. The second act is you'd say is him at
boot camp.
which
Yeah,
goes
right.
by kind of quickly too.
Right.
And then the third act is extremely long, really high energy and interesting.
It's
which is
pretty
all,
much
it's pretty much all of the
all
stuff.
action up until there's like one lull at night in the foxhole, and then it's all action to the
Right.
end.
And it's not even just it's the action. Those are the critical. Like the movie might as well not even exist had it not been for the
Sure,
third act.
sure.
Like the
Right,
first two
right.
acts, you're like, okay, here is a a guy who marries a girl. He's a pacifist, and he's going to war, and he's getting kind of bullied for it, and now he's off to war. That's all the first 2 acts really show, and they're just so separate from the last one that I thought. I don't know. Like I don't know if there's a different way to do that. Like I think that the story of Saving Private Ryan isn't quite as interesting as Hacksaw Ridge, like the true story, right?
Right.
Although that it also like this is how war movies are made is from these interesting stories, like the fact that there was a Private Ryan who all of his brothers had died and they had a mission to go get him and save him because of his poor mom. That's such an interesting story.
Right.
I think the movie, that story is not anywhere close to as amazing, as interesting as Desmond Doss's story.
Right.
But the movie is executed far better. Like it's done way better in my opinion.
I think part of it is all the action is packed right into the end.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you were to stretch that out and have like that be 2/3 of the movie, I don't know if I could handle that much explosions all at once. So I think maybe what you could have done is kind of interspersed it a little more. And had it be more of a action scene flashback, and kind of we build up to Dawes.
Less linear, more kind of.
And the only problem with that is, you really need all the backstory to understand who Dawes is,
right?
And then to see him in the action.
Yeah,
so,
this was almost necessary,
Yeah, and so it is very jarring, but I think in some ways that's appropriate for these new kids going into World War II, not the trenches, kind of the opposite of a trench if you think about it, but just going right into the thick of the battle,
right?
And it goes 0 to 100 in the movie, and that's kind of what happened to them too. Like they get deployed, and that's their first combat is Hacksaw Ridge, getting just mowed in half by chainsaws, by machine guns. That would have been a wild movie. The Japanese just come out.
They got
chainsaw katanas.
We've changed the name to Chainsaw Ridge.
It is funny though. It brings up a good point that I thought about watching this movie. It made me think of this. So we think of movies that have scenes that we look forward to, either scenes or it doesn't have to be confined to one scene. Maybe a certain part of the movie, whatnot. So I think of Lord of the Rings. Every time I watch Two Towers, the 2 scenes that I wait for every single time. Technically, there's more than that. There's the end of the battle.
There are
and everything.
more than 2 scenes.
Yeah, correct. But I think about when Gandalf takes off his robe, and before that, or I can't remember timeline. It's just before that he also reveals himself to Aragorn. All these things.
Yeah.
Right. There's these big scenes that you wait for. And when you think of the movie, you think of those scenes. Now, not every movie has those. So it's actually, I wanted to ask you guys about that. Is that a blessing or a curse to have that one scene that you're looking forward to? So we have in Hacksaw, you have the third act of the movie. So that's one kind of part that we look forward. But also we have the scene when his dad busts into the court-martial. In my opinion, that's a very big arc of the movie. It's the scene you're like, oh, I got to pay attention. I got to get off my phone for a minute, So I'm curious to think whether you guys think that's a blessing or a curse to have in a movie as far as a storytelling method.
I mean, I think it depends on the movie. It depends on what story you're trying to tell.
Right.
Because, I think in this way, in the same way that works for Lord of the Rings, is like it is a story that is crescendoing,
right?
And so it culminates in these big moments of Gandalf throwing off his cloak and revealing he's Gandalf the White,
right?
Of Gandalf showing up again at dawn, and like saving the day. So I think those sorts of movies it works, and I think in more dramatic movies or more like thinky movies, like Whiplash, which I was not a fan of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like sine waves. It's crescendo, peak, crescendo, peak, crescendo.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also difficult to do in a adaptation of a real true story, especially one that you're trying to hold.
You are reasonably somewhat constrained by what actually happened.
Exactly,
and people will hold it to a different kind of scrutiny as opposed to like. The Lord of the Rings can exist with these amazing moments where, Sam gives his speech to Frodo when Frodo is kind of in this point of despair.
No, that's what actually happened. That's historically accurate.
And you can know, and the amazement behind that moment is that it's so well written and it's so well done and acted that you can be moved by it, and you can be moved by the message it's trying to send. Whereas this one, you almost raise an eyebrow and you're like, all right, like this wasn't this corny in real life. And you're sitting there like, well, no.
That's why I think the interviews really pulled it together, because you're like,
exactly.
This is exactly what happened in real life. Because there is part of that. It's like it's it's too wild to believe that this would actually happen in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like in a fantasy, you don't have to worry about, like, if the world building is good, absurd things can happen, and you're like, well, it's consistent with the world that they've presented us, so
Sure.
I'm not like pulled out of the story.
Right.
Versus if, like modern Hollywood, a lot of times they don't do that, and you're like, well, I'm just completely pulled out of the story because they just broke their own world building in half.
And
Knock off all of new Star Wars.
And if anything, that's what this movie suffers a little bit from is the fact that the true story is so incredible
wild.
that it's like he could spend the whole time just telling the Desmond Doss story of what happened at Hacksaw Ridge, and it wouldn't be a very linear story. Like it would just exist as kind of a jumble of high action, insane things. And in a movie standpoint, it's not that phenomenal. You're like, well, of course you could have an actor kick these things, and the story could go in this direction because you're directing it. But then you find out that it's a true story.
yeah, it's interesting. Like, no, they're just writing down what he actually did.
I think I'd be far more interested in. There's a documentary called the conscious
conscientious objector.
Yeah, there's a documentary called The Conscientious Objector about his life, and I'm like that might be a
More
far
appealing.
better watch. I don't know.
Sure.
Like, I think Mel Gibson did about as good as he could with the story, but I think that the story was almost like
Too
too
surreal.
phenomenal.
Too-
Like,
Yeah.
and it's reflected in the fact that when they talk to him about it, he's like, I did kick half the stuff out. Like, who's gonna believe that he rolls off his stretcher to help another guy, gets shot by a sniper, crawls back to? I'm like, this is just nuts. So it's like I want to hear more about that because it makes the real story more cool.
The
but
term
movie,
that
Agreed.
we're kind of dancing around is verisimilitude. Is how much does this jibe with what we think reality should be like? And so
Right.
again, for a fantasy world or a fictional world, right? Of
Science time. Then let's
go ahead and say that word again.
verisimilitude.
All right, go ahead.
In other words, how
missed that.
in other words, how close is it to the truth?
Yeah.
Verisimilitude. And so for a fictional story, right, the verisimilitude is that you've established that magic works XYZ way. So when we see people using magic, we expect it to act XYZ way. Now, you if you break your own rules, then ironically the story loses its magic because you're like, okay, well, there are no rules, so the author can just write whatever Deus Ex Machina crap they want to happen.
Right.
And then it just breaks everything, right? Harry Potter's a little bit guilty of this because the magic rules of magic are kind of ill-defined.
Yep.
But no, I know it's like in
but so
Star
then-
Wars,
yeah.
like there's explosions and sound in space, and it's
Right.
like, but it's like, what if randomly in episode 25 they're like, well, we can do this because we know there's no sound or explosions in space,
And
you've
Well, okay,
established
so-
a world where
so
that happens constantly.
For example,
Right.
like they're in space and everything on the spaceships. We know they have artificial gravity because everyone's walking around, no problem. So we're like,
Yeah.
okay, on a spaceship, you just walk around.
Yeah.
However, we're assuming that space is still space, and so in the Last Jedi, when they come up with the bombers, that in space it's dropping like real bombs. You're like, that's just stupid. Like
or when he's like, they're out of the range of our lasers, and the lasers are falling
I
like
know, they're
cannon
falling in
fire, and I'm like,
space.
what the hell am I watching right now?
Or they're opening the bomb doors and she's just able to breathe in the vacuum of space.
Yeah,
you know?
so
right.
it's stuff like that. That's the verisimilitude where if they had established something like, oh yeah, space actually has a breathable atmosphere.
Right.
If they established that earlier, then you're like, okay, well, if someone's breathing in space, then
or
that's no problem.
lasers actually fall down in the
Oh
middle
yeah,
of
the
space,
lasers.
you
The
know?
lasers
Yeah.
arc because they're actually like like concentrated plasma that has weight and it arcs down because it follows the curvature of the Earth or whatever. If they explain that somehow,
Flat, what are you talking about?
yeah, if they explain that somehow, then it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. As long as you understand in your mind, you're understanding like this is following the rules that have been established.
Right.
Your brain doesn't have a problem with that.
Right.
And then when it doesn't, your brain is like something's wrong. It feels wrong.
Right.
Right. And when people are like, oh, just turn your brain off, like, well, I'm sorry, I can't just switch my brain off because I'm not an idiot.
Right,
Right.
right.
I actually, I enjoy stories that make sense. And sometimes a story can be so unbelievable that when someone tells it to you, you're like, my brain can't process that being real.
Right. Like if Hacksaw
And I feel like
Ridge,
this story is so phenomenal, it's just so outlandish that without those, and again, like what really tied it together for me were those interviews where I was like,
Right,
oh,
right.
that's what really brought it back to, oh no, this is a real thing that happened to real people.
otherwise
Like,
it's going to feel
they-
like the Mummy
they were
or
actually,
Armageddon.
they were
right?
actually,
You know?
and the
Right,
fact is,
yeah.
they weren't embellishing it; they were
Right.
unembellishing it. They were
Right.
trying to make it less crazy.
They were scaling it
that
back
yeah, they
so
were
we could
scaling it back
believe
so
it.
you could actually
Yeah.
look at that and be like, this is like the most ridiculous fiction story of all time,
Right.
right?
Well, that's the problem it faces. That's the because as a viewer you go, oh, it's not that spectacular to make a movie about a guy doing these things.
Right.
It is unbelievable that a real person
Yeah.
could do any of these things.
And-
So the movie itself ends up not being all that like. I wouldn't say it's not great because I really like the movie. Like I'm saying all these critiques about it,
And so
I'm just kind of comparing it to other war movies
And
that
so
I've
I
watched.
think what might have helped it to go back to how what could Mel Gibson have done to help the to us with that is to maybe interlace some of the real life interviews in earlier.
Start with it.
To
That's what I was just
kind
about
of
to
go
say.
Band of
to
Brothers in a
establish
way.
that, to establish that
right.
and be like, okay, this is a real person. These are real things that he really did, and then go into it, and then you're like, wow, this guy actually did that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like you're more pulled into the story because you're like, this guy had a crazy adventure.
Well, there's a movie that does this incredibly well, and it's a fiction. It's not even the interviews are fiction, but it's Interstellar. Interstellar starts off
I have
with
not seen that yet.
Are you
I haven't either.
Yeah.
You guys,
I know.
You keep yelling at me for not having watched Interstellar, but every time we watch a movie, you never say, "Hey, let's watch Interstellar." So that's on you.
I
buddy.
literally just thought about that 2 days ago. I was like,
you live
know
here
what?
in
I
you live
should
here in
try.
Charlotte.
I do. I'm born and raised.
All right, we're gonna watch Interstellar.
All right,
we'll,
all right.
we'll rope Liam into it. He loves that movie. Anyways,
deal.
Liam loves it. Must be a terrible movie.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I mean, look at him.
I'll take offense to that.
That's a face that would like that movie.
So this movie starts off, and it's kind of like a futuristic setting. This isn't spoil anything. This is the first scene,
Of course.
And it's like it's in a cornfield. It just looks very normal.
Kermit the Frog's there,
But it starts off with these interviews of people. They're old people, and they're just kind of talking about. It seems very real. Like they're just like, well, yeah, I can remember we used to have to wipe all the dust off of the plates before we served, lunch and all this stuff, and then oh yeah, the clouds would come out, and they're just talking about like the world as you're about to see it, kind of, and it brings a sort of reality to it. That again, it's
Verisimilitude.
fiction. It's fiction, but it helped so much. And I'm like, you could have done that with the real interviews. Just started the movie off with him saying things, or I think it would have benefited just from a slide that just said the things you're about to see in this movie, like these are extremely close to the truth or something. It might be hard to believe, but this movie, like whatever, something kind of shocking like that.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody I've talked to has had the same experience I did. I know me and my brother did when we watched it in theaters.
Yep.
We were with my dad, and we were both like, yeah, I was kind of like, this movie's lame until I saw the interviews at the end. And I'm like, it really would have, I think enough people have said
it
it
really
now
would
to
have
where I'm like,
benefited
it would have
from
benefited if
opening
people
with that.
knew that with some kind of been like, you're about to see a lot of things that seem unbelievable, but
they're
these
real.
are very, very close to the true story, even though it's hard to believe. And then the movie starts. I might be watching it and be a little more gripped by what I'm seeing because I'm going, okay, this movie is about it, and I'm obviously they know that people could look this up, so they're not going to lie to me. So what I'm seeing is like I would wear it with a little more weight. I think.
Well, it's kind of like in video games they talk about crossing the uncanny valley. What's actually believable, and if they make it too realistic, suddenly the game loses its value because it's like this is not whatever.
Right.
And I laughed because movies like The Mummy, Armageddon, these older movies. I don't think there's movies.
God.
I genuinely don't think I've critiqued a movie harder than The Mummy. It was like our favorite pastime. We'd all as a family.
Have you seen the other ones?
I have, and it's just
Jeez.
I mean, it is a ski slope. It's straight downhill right there.
Okay, but it has one of the best moments. So we call it an MI2 moment.
Yeah.
Because every now and then we'll be watching a movie and something will happen where we sit up.
It will ascend.
We sit up and we stop and we rewind it and we watch a moment 10 times. And in Mission Impossible 2, it's when he's like escaping on the motorcycle and he's like driving out from the smoke cloud because he like burns his tires. And you can see the smoke machine billowing smoke out and we're like,
not even trying
it's
to
just
hide
like
it. It's
it's just sitting there on the side, and
They don't give a crap.
And the world's like fakest slap sound. But in
There was
The Mummy
a lot of
Returns,
moments in MI2.
In
Yeah.
The Mummy Returns, the MI2 moment for us was he stabs the Scorpion King, and Imhotep just runs into the side.
Just like that. I mean, it is. I'll show you on my phone after this. It's one of the most. I mean, it stopped Nathaniel and I dead in our tracks. I mean, when I tell
We
you,
were like checked out to this movie. We were like,
it's
it's
ridiculous
whatever.
enough that The Rock is a scorpion, right? And they're
like
man.
we're like almost falling asleep, like because first off, like the Mummy series is pretty trash. It got rated the worst
It like
series.
started as a 6 and it went downhill from there.
It started as
6
like
was generous.
mediocre, and then it just dropped. And
Yeah.
so we're watching the second one, and we're like, oh man, we got like 3 more of these. This has been a terrible movie. And all of a sudden, like he stabs this guy, and we're like, okay, he stabbed the CGI guy, and then running into the scene, like he takes a couple extra, like, it looks just so awful. And he stops, pauses, gets down on a knee, and just goes,
lunges forward. Just
like, it's just the most amazing. Like, me and Nathaniel instantly lose our minds. Like, we're like, that's how you know it's good, though, is when nobody told us the scene was coming. We didn't have to rewind it and go, man, we missed this. It happened in live time. Both of us simultaneously were like,
snapped away.
that was, we rewound it, watched it maybe 3 or 4 times, recorded it.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's amazing.
But that's like that. Every scene that it feels like that for us with watching those movies. It was literally like a family pastime. We'd be like, oh, we'd pause the movie. Look at that. He did that. What did he say? Why did he? It's just, there's so many things. And even
Kevin, unplug the Nintendo 64. We're trying to watch The Mummy Returns. Oh, that's just The Rock. Never mind.
Wow.
Seriously, that's some of the worst CGI I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, it's atrocious. Like the only thing that competes with that is the first Hulk movie with whatever the
the Ang Lee Hulk.
Yeah, exactly right,
Dude,
but,
I like that movie. I love
honestly,
Ang Lee Hulk.
Like the funny thing is, it's like actually like well constructed as a comic book movie, but man, the CGI is just an abomination.
Listen,
Yeah,
it was
on board
good. It
with
was
that.
good for what it was, but that CGI, I mean, that was like it looked like if water balloons came to life. It was so bad, you know.
His face was like so ballooned out.
Yep,
They tried to still get some of the features of the actor's face. And it was like, oh, this is rough.
They tried. They tried. What was that?
An
circa,
attempt was made.
Yeah,
it was 2001.
It was very
It was
I mean, you forget
the
that
thing
they were.
is,
Yeah.
and you know, you could take this for what it's worth. The thing is, at that time, you have movies that have way, way, way better CGI. So even then, like nowadays, you can get an AI to do the damn thing and it'll look better than that. But
literally did it this morning.
And yet, and yet, all this Marvel schlock coming out has some of the worst CGI I've ever seen.
Yeah, it really does.
And it's like you really like even in 2001 that CGI was considered like, well, that looks like garbage. We've had better CGI since like even Jurassic Park had better CGI than this.
And I have so much
goated.
respect.
Yeah, Jurassic Park is goated. That was what, 91?
Yeah.
And they made it look that good.
Yep.
And it's like, and even some of the stuff from like, it's funny because we watched The Phantom Menace fairly recently,
right?
And you know the actual like stills, the CGI stills look really good. It's the characters that just kind of look awful.
Jar Jar's rough.
Jar Jar's rough.
But the actual CGI,
other than
stuff,
that, like for the most part, a lot of times you don't even notice it.
Right.
It's like it's well
right.
constructed.
The domes are a little
so
noticeable,
like,
but it still looks great. Yeah.
It's like, okay, so you have to work hard to have CGI that bad.
Right. Yeah, you do. I mean, nothing but respect. I in high school I did an internship with a guy who did graphics design, and he was the one. Now he purposely did bad CGI because he was working for car dealerships, and they wanted deal, man. I'm slashing deals and breaking heels. Like it's like, so that's the kind of CG he was working on. But I tried it, man. I'm telling you, it took me an hour to make one polygon. I was like, what in the world is this? But it's and that was obviously on circa 2007.
And the punch cards, like
right, exactly. But no, it's funny though. You know, even coming back to Hacksaw with what we were talking about with the mummy and everything. It's funny how, like you were saying, it's amazing how. If they didn't say it at the end, I wouldn't have believed it was true because I was sitting there. I was having one of those moments.
I didn't even realize
like,
it was based on a true story until they started showing the interviews at the end. I was like, wait a minute.
Right?
I thought this was just like a World War II dramatization.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Exactly,
there was this
right.
thing called Hacksaw Ridge, and here's this guy
Right.
who's a pacifist. Like, oh, this sounds like a cool story.
Yeah.
But no, it's
And
like
I guess,
this is something that actually happened.
I don't know if we should spoil it if it's only like 8 years old now, but the guy wins a Medal of
2016
Honor.
was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I know, stop it. But it's
I will
amazing.
say, even
Yeah.
for 2016, I was impressed by how well a man of faith was portrayed by Hollywood. And again, I can only give them so much credit because, again, it was based off a real story.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
He was transgender.
And
It's like,
he was actually a transgender demi woman.
No, but that's actually, it's something I think about a lot because Hollywood has such rich stories that they could tap into, whether it's the Bible. Now, I'm glad that they aren't necessarily doing some of that because I'm worried what they would do with it. But,
I mean, did you
know.
watch
Have
the
you
Noah?
seen the Noah movie?
Yeah.
No, I have not, and I purposely didn't. Right? Yeah.
boy.
Woo,
Let me
buddy.
tell you.
You know what was a better Noah movie than that?
Yeah.
Evan Almighty.
Was
a better Noah movie than Noah.
when I tell you that might actually be accurate, it's
No, it's
Oh,
100%.
that's so sad.
Evan Almighty is actually like a decent movie, and it's basically a
as
Noah story.
soon as the Transformers came out of the ground in the Noah movie, I was like, wait, hold on a second here.
My name is
Like,
Optimus Prime.
like there's this amazing scene in the trailers where he's standing in front of all this opposition.
Russell Crowe, right?
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
like you're gonna stand there and defy us alone, and he's like, I'm not alone, and it's like, oh, it's amazing scene.
He's got
right?
God
he's
with
talking
him.
about God.
It's like,
no, it was Optimus
In
Prime.
the real in the movie,
Noah, I'm
there
here
are
to
there are
save you.
transforming rock monsters that come out of the ground. And,
In
and
Noah?
Yes.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be.
What?
They're supposed to be
Nephilim.
the fallen angels.
Yeah, which aren't good guys. So why are they helping Noah? But
Yeah,
whatever.
and also they're not rock giants or whatever you're
Yeah, the
describing. them
Nephilim
as,
were just
right?
mighty men.
Yeah.
They're just big dudes.
They're just
They should have just had The Rock be like, "Yo, what's up? Yeah, brother, I'm the Nephilim.
I swear to you,
if you smell
if Scorpion
what
Rock
the Nephilim
showed
are
up-
cooking."
Now I wish that they would do a mashup. If the Scorpion Rock came in, the water starts flooding
So-
and the mummy's just there. "Ah!"
So apparently, and I found this out because I had to look up because my mother asked me what jabroni meant. So I had to look up the origin of jabroni, and
way.
apparently it was popularized by The Rock.
I
Like when he
actually
was a
don't know what
wrestler.
it is. What is this?
Jabroni, just like idiot.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah,
like
got it. Yeah.
meathead. Like I think it literally,
Oh, that's hilarious.
from what I was able to figure out, it's like
Yeah.
it's probably derived from the Italian word for ham.
Yeah.
Like it literally just means like you're just a meathead. You jabroni.
Well,
But apparently The Rock was the one who
Are
popularized
you
that
serious?
while he was a wrestler.
That is freaking hilarious.
I think that also the really good war movies that I'm trying to think of.
Yeah.
They obviously
War.
they all
Good God, y'all.
What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Anyways,
We've
That was
been friends
lame.
too long.
yeah.
anyways, they obviously all have to take an element of like we're telling kind of a true story, here,
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it's existing around
And
a
I
war.
think that's why you end up with a lot of very well regarded
Right.
World War, like generally speaking, war movies tend to be well
Yeah.
regarded because the story that they're telling is true.
Right.
And so you don't have a lot of hoops. All you have to do is like arrange it competently and shoot it well, and you've got a good movie.
Right.
Well, and I think the good ones, will take a story that's, I wouldn't say it's small. Like the Saving Private Ryan story is amazing.
Right.
It's really interesting that
Right,
happened.
but like a
Right.
small focused story.
But mainly that movie exists to show you what that war was like, and
Right,
it follows
right.
it follows the story. So like we're experiencing this was wild war through the lens of this kind of side quest story.
Yeah.
and that's really
Right,
interesting.
yeah.
But you can kind of forget that that's the point of Saving Private Ryan.
Right,
Honestly, like you can be like, oh, Saving Private Ryan, the World War I movie, like where they stormed Normandy.
Is it World War II?
It's two.
Whatever.
Definitely
It's
two.
World War II.
One of
movie.
the Germany
definitely
wars.
Where,
Yeah, one of the two Germany wars.
but you can kind of forget that this movie was
let's do over under right now that World War III will be started by Germany.
Oh man.
to make it real difficult for everybody.
Man, everyone stopped watching.
Negative viewers, that doesn't seem possible.
But I think that's like this movie.
FBI would like to chat.
Story was too. It's almost like it was too much to be.
Yeah.
It like exists outside of war movies, like traditional war movies for
Right.
me.
Well, it reminds me of almost like The Imitation Game or Operation
Yeah.
Mincemeat or all these other movies that are very much side quests. They're the parts that you don't see very often. So yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of the war movies, the really good ones, are focused on characters who are in war. It's not like
Right.
it's not about World War II.
Right.
World
Right.
War II is the setting, but it's about the characters and how they navigate
Right.
the war.
Right.
There's one of my favorite war movies of all time. Maybe my favorite. I don't know. It's called Enemy at the Gate. Have you seen that?
I think I have. Yes.
Might have seen that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. That's one of those movies that I've definitely seen, but question whether I've seen it every time I think about it.
So it's about a Russian sniper played by
Yeah.
Jude Law.
Yep.
And it's a true story. I mean, again, wild story. It's a true story about Vasily Zaitsev, who's a Russian sniper who kind of tips the scales in their battle against Germany. And all this is like pretty well documented because his best friend is a newspaper writer.
Oh, wow,
and so he keeps telling the story, like all of Vasily's like kills and all this stuff, and he keeps racking up all the kills to the point where Germany had to send out one of their most decorated snipers to try to like smoke him out, like to find him. And so they had kind of have this battle over several weeks of trying to find each other and kill each other. And the German sniper is super experienced. And then, anyways, whatever. Like, so it follows this true story, but you get to see firsthand, the war and how brutal it was. And it's one of the, I think the only movie that depicts what Russia was doing at the time, where they literally had a line of men behind their front line that would shoot their front line if it turned around and came back.
Wow.
And they depict that.
Yeah,
and
the old Russian thing of like, well, we got more men, so you better go kill them.
Right,
Like, you don't retreat, or we will shoot you.
Right.
In Mother Russia, comrade shoots you.
But it's like, that's a small enough story, right? All you get is there's a sniper, he kills a lot of people, and he eventually has a standoff with his German sniper.
Right.
And it's at a really pivotal point.
Very Jason Bourne.
It's a very pivotal point of this war, and it doesn't really talk much about like direction of the war and how it's going. It's mainly just about this guy. And so through that, they're able to build his character and do whatever the heck they want with it.
Yeah,
they can build a love story, and they can build a relationship with so-and-so and this and that. And it actually becomes this beautiful, amazing movie, even though the story is probably far less interesting than Hacksaw Ridge, where it's like, hey, this is a really talented sniper. Very cool. Like, the fact that he killed that many people is incredible, like how talented he was.
Right.
But the Hacksaw Ridge story is like virtually unbelievable. Like to the point where if you said it at no point, I think, would people be like, that sounds reasonable. They'd all be like, this is insane. It's a comic book at this point.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's actually the only thing. And I think the thing that everybody comes away with is, once I saw the interviews, I was kind of convinced that it was really cool.
Yep.
So it's one of those that after you watch it, you're kind of thrilled, but during the watching process, it was like, oh man, what phenomenal thing is he going to do next? Now he's punting grenades out of the way while he flips and gives a guy an IV and saves another dude, and everybody else is running. He's not running. You're like, yep, that all happened. You're like, okay, all right, it's wild.
Well, yeah, it's funny because we're so conditioned to watch movies that are labeled as a true story that you really find out they're not. U-571 is one of my favorite movies growing up, and you find out that the way it happened is really not exactly how they portrayed it in the film. In fact, a lot of it was fabricated. And I'm funny. I don't know about you guys, but when I watch a war movie, I typically prefer them to be true stories. If it's like one of these adaptations of what could have happened during the war in World War II, like here's a spy that could have existed. I'm like, yeah, that's a cool story, but I'm like, I don't know. That's just my personal
That definitely
preference.
feels more of like a thing to do for a video game. Like, hey,
exactly
here's this person in World War II that didn't actually exist, but let you play through parts of World War II without the need to be historically accurate.
Right. So yeah, I know it's one of those things that like U-571, I thought it was really accurate. Turns out not so much. Midway, kind of like Hacksaw Ridge, you see all these characters and you go, wow, this is just like too cinematic to be true. And then it's like, wait a minute, at the end they explain everything, and it's these characters are actually real. So yeah, it's interesting how when I was watching it the first time, we've talked about it a lot, where it might have benefited from having that interview at the beginning, because you're literally thinking like, did he really just go full Aragorn and slap a grenade out of the air? Like, geez. So yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like, I think that,
and then they're like, yeah, well, we had to kind of tone that down because the reality is he like served it up and then spiked it.
Yeah, he started it with his tongue and then served it up and spiked it like a tennis ball.
He pulled out a baseball bat and pointed and then just like. But we felt that was like, people wouldn't believe that he actually did that, but that's what he did.
Well, I think people also take it's a tough subject to fabricate, right? Like, you gotta really
especially
walking on
World
eggshells.
War II is very well documented.
Yeah. And when you do like so Black Hawk Down gets a lot of flack for being one of the more like Hollywood versions of it.
Yeah.
But as an actual movie, it's kind of one of my favorites to watch, because it's, as a movie, it's probably one of the better done movies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of how it happened. I don't know if that's how it has to happen. I don't think it's always necessarily the case, but oftentimes it's how it happens, because you're able to give yourself full liberty to make the characters do whatever you want, to be more realistic. And I'm just one of those people that's kind of okay with that. I'm like, okay, that story really did happen. There was a Black Hawk that went down, and they had a mission to go in and get it. Do I care that Vin Diesel wasn't one of the guys and this whatever the case? You know, like all the other parts. That's kind of secondary for me. For me, if I'm going to watch a movie, I want to just be told a good story. Okay, so it's not completely accurate. Like I'm okay with that. Like get Hans Zimmer to do the music. It was fantastic. You know? The Patriot's another one of those. Whereas like I don't think there's an actual guy named Benjamin Martin. I could be wrong that there was an actual guy, but the story wasn't like
we're
exactly
the fact checkers,
right? So the story kind of just exists to show maybe what it was like during those times, and then it has the kind of pivotal points of like we won this battle, this happened, and then eventually Cornwallis did this. It has key people like General Cornwallis and some others, but more or less it's following the story about a guy who loses a couple of his sons in this war and his struggle with either having his own vengeance or fighting for the cause. Like a big moment in that movie is like, well, when did he actually become a patriot? And it's when he has this chance to go after the big bad guy who's killed two of his sons. Right. And he sits there and he turns and he sees the line faltering and he decides to run to the line with the flag away from his adversary, because like that's what he needed to do for his people. And it was like that was the moment that he started caring about why he's fighting more than why he's personally fighting. And it's this really powerful moment, right? And for me, I'm like, well, who cares? I don't care if Benjamin Martin was. This is an amazing movie. Exactly. Like, way to tell it. It's
The
beautiful.
Last Samurai was not actually Tom Cruise.
Yes.
It was definitely a Japanese guy.
Another one of my favorite
that just
movies.
shatters my entire universe.
and like 100%, I know that samurai were like monstrous people, and like that movie is just like, oh, look at the little samurai.
Yeah, they're
so
romanticized. But
and I'm like,
these are
okay.
I mean, it's kind of like we romanticize pirates. It's like,
exactly.
Samurais were. It was a feudal system.
Yeah. It was.
So while there were noble samurais, there were also scoundrel samurais. Just like there were noble knights and there were scoundrel knights.
Exactly right.
It had to do with the authority that you had, and some people used it well, and some people did not.
Right. But to your point though, I really enjoy a movie that if it's true and it's not completely accurate, I'm fine. If it's for the entertainment value, some of those things I can get past. Where I draw the line is when it starts becoming so egregious that it takes away from the story. There's a few sensitive subjects that I'll probably just say the generic version of what they are, but it was a really, really good movie, good movies, the ones that I'm thinking of, and they just didn't happen the way they portrayed it at all. It was actually way more mild. It was totally fine. There was no like tension between the characters, and so that's the time where I'm like, I mean, this is a really good movie, but all I can think about is this didn't happen at all. Like,
Steven's sitting in a theater and something happens and he goes, fake news, wrong. I am the best historian. Everyone says this. Ask anyone. Well, this Hollywood is fake news.
Fake news.
The Social Network. The Social Network's one of my favorite movies ever. Yeah. I mean, it's renowned to be.
That one,
and you don't see Mark Zuckerberg lick his eyeballs with his tongue a single time. It's super unrealistic. What? It's ridiculous. He's a lizard. You don't see him like. You can't even see his scales. They just airbrushed it out. It's like, come on, guys, try to be realistic.
I don't even know how to recover.
I'm just telling you the truth, man.
I'm just gonna go to bed tonight thinking, why did Mark Zuckerberg lick his
They don't want to
eyeballs?
admit this, but Mark Zuckerberg, I've seen him. He's a lizard man. He's a very nice man, but he is a lizard.
There's a deleted scene where he's actually peeling his skin.
Yeah, just like he's in front of the mirror and and then just puts it back. Face off? No.
Oh man.
See what happens is he takes it off and he opens this big tome and it's all the different human faces he has, and he's like, Facebook.
Or he makes a book out of his little sheddings or things like that. This is good. This took a turn.
That's what happens when I'm on a podcast or in a conversation period.
All right. Well, good sir, Mr. Steven. We like to end the show in a really unique way. I don't know if you've watched any of our shows, but we like to end our shows by doing a Mad Lib.
Doors right there.
With
only accept super fans.
With our esteemed guest.
All right.
Usually
Tell me when to stop.
Usually we have Liam conduct the Mad Lib, and he'll ask you for things to implement.
All right.
Let me take a look. Hold on. Under your fingers. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Okay.
You mentioned the word
So-
Mad Lib, and I'm happy now. So let's.
Okay, so Nathaniel is going to ask you to fill out this Mad Lib. He'll be asking these questions. You'll fill it out. Nathaniel will read it in kind of a silly voice. And the goal of all of this is that at the end of season 2, we are going to go through all the Mad Libs that our guests have provided. Oh, man. We're going to pick one and actually do a short film of the Mad Lib. We'll be filming it.
Oh, this is
acting
so
in
great.
it. And the winner will actually get a chance, if they wish, to appear in the short film. So you're trying to create a funny, interesting,
All right.
You know what we
doable Mad
should
Lib.
probably do, which I'll do on this one.
What?
Yeah.
We can always go back and check the records, but I should probably write down whose Mad Lib
Who's
it is.
Mad Lib it is?
Oh, we
that
can-
might help.
I can remember that.
Yeah.
There's really
just gonna write it at the bottom.
I feel like there might also only be one that I can even think of that was relatively that made any sense. Like all the other ones, like
Pure
the
nonsense.
language didn't even make sense. Like it
Oh,
was just
man.
like
Well, lower your expectations today, boys.
All right.
so. Anyway, so Nathaniel's gonna ask you these questions,
All
and
right.
you can sit with him for a moment here.
You know, if I win, that'll make my IMDb up to 2 because I was in whatever Lego movie there was.
Is that true?
Yeah, it is. It was not. I wasn't
No,
in the
not
Lego
the
movies.
Lego movie.
It was a small production Christian film that my buddies put on from church, and I have my IMDb for being like guard number 1 on like a 30-minute Lego film that got shut down because Lego was like, "Hey, stop it!" So it was
right.
great.
Plural noun. Noun is a person, place, or thing. Plural noun.
Yeah, armpits.
Love that.
Starting out strong.
Okay, you're gonna regret having used that already. You'll see why. Adjective.
Oh man,
Describe something.
Um,
Descriptor.
flabulous. It's not a word.
Oh my god,
It
this is
now.
already gonna be a terrible Mad Lib.
Another adjective.
Another adjective. Huge.
I'm gonna put that Y-U-G-E.
Huge.
Huge. Every man. Nope, I'm not. I shouldn't be reading it. Noun. I started reading it by accident. Noun.
Charcuterie board.
Noun.
Anus.
You're gonna regret using that one as well.
Oh
Noun.
my gosh.
Noun.
Noun. A
I'm just
boat.
gonna say, stop using body parts because it asks for body parts later. You're using all the good body parts. Okay. Noun. Boat.
All right, a boat. Yeah, we're just gonna go simple with
Boat.
that one. Boat.
Another noun.
Dog's butt.
I'm gonna put dog butt. 'Cause it's singular.
Yeah, and then you can like
Adjective.
trim the edges if you ever see one that's like this is not gonna like
Yeah, this is
fit,
not gonna work.
fit it
This is
in.
not gonna work.
I got it.
Adjective.
I'm live editing.
Yeah.
All right. Adjective.
Massive. I can only think of size measurements on this. Apparently,
All right. Part of the body.
part of the body. The ankle.
Just one ankle.
Just one.
Single
Not
ankle.
ankles.
Left ankle.
Plural noun.
Plural noun. Pigeons.
Adjective.
Knowing the theme, I can already imagine how this is going.
Generous.
There you go. Noun.
Taco truck.
There's some wordy nouns, man.
I'm
It's
making
not
this
just a
hard for you
taco,
guys.
it's not a truck,
Adjective.
it's a
You're not
taco
making it
truck.
hard for me. These are easy to read.
Okay, good, because I can't spell cat sometimes. But anyways,
Adjective.
Stupendous.
Cat. K-A-T. I'm out of here.
I'm outta
I
here.
hate to tell you this, but that actually fits.
Oh yeah, all right.
You failed the Mad Lib. That word actually works very well there. All right, noun. Almost there.
Yeah, worm.
Worm.
Part of the body, plural.
The lymph nodes.
And part of the body.
I already used all the fun ones.
I know, that's why I told you to stop.
What is it? Another part of the body?
Singular part of the body.
Singular part of the body. Left testicle.
There it is. Last one to bring it home.
That's right.
And plural noun.
Plural noun. Cops.
Love that.
All right.
Love cops. All right. So, Nathaniel, you tell me when you're ready. All right. Without further ado, this is the magical Mad Lib
This is already going to be a
depicted by
dumpster fire.
Steven.
Title: Magic? Anyone? Sorry, Magic? Anyone?
All right. So without further ado, Nathaniel Evanson, take it away.
Armpits of all ages enjoy watching fabulous magicians, not musicians. This is different. Let me start over. Armpits of all ages enjoy watching fabulous magicians perform their huge tricks. Every man, woman, and charcuterie board loves to see a magician pull an anus out of a hat, saw a live boat in half, or make a huge dog butt disappear into massive air. Audiences love when magicians perform sleight of ankle with a deck of pigeons, a generous coin, or a silk taco truck. The greatest of all magicians was the stupendous Harry Houdini. You see, you messed it up. Who was able to escape from a locked worm, even though his lymph nodes were tied behind his left testicle and his feet were wrapped in iron cups. The end.
Good old iron cops. That was pretty solid.
What just happened?
Okay, your lymph nodes are here, and to tie them behind your left testicle would be quite a stretch.
Pretty insane.
That's pretty wild.
Hey, he's a magician, though.
Yeah, that's
That's
right.
why he was the greatest. That's why he was the greatest. Him and his deck of pigeons and his silk taco truck.
Oh my gosh.
It was incredible.
The silk taco truck.
That was a lot to take in.
It was incredible.
Typically, if you pull an anus out of a hat, they give you like 5 to 10 for disorderly conduct.
Yeah, that's true. Or murder, just depending on which one you
it
went
depends
with.
on whose anus it is. If it's someone else's anus, then you get done up for murder. If it's your anus, you get done up for public indecency. Like, just how it goes.
Uranus.
Space.
Space.
Scientists renamed it in 2208 so people would stop making that dumb joke. What's it called now?
Your rectum.
You need to watch Futurama, Greg. It's very good.
I'm out of the loop.
You need to watch Futurama.
It is
It's
the
great.
best.
It's great.
I'm out of the loop.
That's one show I could probably name episode names on. So I've watched it way too much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great show. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
I
for having
really
me.
appreciate it.
Come back sometime.
It's been a lot of fun. We will
2 weeks.
2 weeks
Is it
from
your guest or
yep,
is it
2 weeks
Liam?
from today. We will be hearing from my guest. I'm pretty sure I have him locked in. He wasn't able to confirm before the show. So,
Do you have any idea what movie he's gonna pick?
no, we need to get
Gumby.
better at that. We need to get better at that. But the problem is we always have to switch days because like random people. So anyways. But we'll be on
until
in 2
then,
weeks.
watch Tuskegee Airmen and cry.
That's
Yeah,
right.
okay,
And
we'll
we'll
watch-
all watch Interstellar
Yeah,
together.
we're gonna
Yeah,
watch
yeah. We're gonna watch
Interstellar together, and we won't talk about that unless it's what our guest. What if our guest picks Interstellar? We'll have Steven back on. Let's bring another chair.
Sounds good.
All right, well, folks, until next time, we are the 4D Podcast, and we are out.
And it gets warm.